Everyone, today I'm going to talk about the area of a circle formula and where it came from, or also known as the derivation of the area of a circle formula. So hopefully you've already watched the link that I posted as your first step, and I really like that link because it's a nice animation of where the area of a circle actually comes from, how they came up with that formula or derived that formula. So if you didn't already watch it, it's okay. I'm going to just kind of briefly go through the area of a circle formula using these diagrams down here. So basically, what we talk about when dealing with the area of a circle is the inside of a circle. So what we've done to this circle, if you take a look, is we cut it up into sectors. And specifically, we've cut it up into 8 sectors, or 8 like pieces of pizza. And from this circle, we arranged the pieces of pizza in such a way. So take a look. So we've arranged all 8 slices, and along the outside, we kind of put this dotted perimeter. And the circle, once rearranged, resembles a parallelogram. So what they do with the parallelogram is like, all right, well, parallelogram, we can say how to find the area of a parallelogram, but to make it look more like a rectangle, they cut this little sector in half and drag the sector over here, and now it looks like a rectangle. If you notice, I'm going to take a hop down here, when the sectors are very, very small, there's a lot of them, the actual quadrilateral starts to resemble more and more a rectangle. So this whole idea of limits, we can keep on cutting up these sectors smaller and smaller, and eventually it'll get really, really close. It'll approach a rectangle. So then what they said was, okay, well, let's just deal with as if this was a parallelogram. It would be base times height to find the area of that parallelogram. So I said, all right, well, over here, if this is the base, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 4 arcs of the circle. So if I go around 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 arcs of the circle is actually half the circumference. So if your circumference formula is 2 pi r and you divide it by 2 by taking half, you're left with just pi r. All right, and then the height of your parallelogram goes from this like vertex down to the outside arc of that sector. Well, if you go to the vertex, the outside arc of a sector, that's the radius. So they have r. So to find the area, it would be the base, pi r, half the circumference, times the height, which is the radius. So pi, and then r times r is r squared. So your area formula for a circle is pi r squared, and that's where it comes from. Okay, so it's a whole idea of cutting up a circle into sectors, rearranging the sectors to form a parallelogram, and then understanding that the base of the parallelogram or the rectangle is half the circumference, which is pi r, and then the height of that parallelogram or rectangle is just your radius of the circle. Multiply base times height, and you get pi r squared. All right, so that's really where that formula comes from. I know you've been introduced to it in middle school, but we were really focusing on the derivation here. So what we have for you are just a couple of just practice problems. We're going to go through 4 and then have you try numbers 5 and 6 through the Google Forms. So basically the first question just says determine the area of a circle. So again, if we're looking for keywords, area of a circle means right off the bat we're using pi r squared, whose radius is 3 centimeters, and we want to leave it in terms of pi. So we'll deal with this at the end. We wrote down our formula. We write down what they're telling us, which is that the radius is 3. So we substitute 3 in for r. And remember, PEMDAS means you do your exponents first. So 3 squared would be evaluated first. So 3 squared is 9. And now let's take a look at what this means in terms of pi. So I know I've talked about this in other lessons, but in terms of pi means that you're just evaluating the numerical values. So 3 pi, the numbers, not the symbol pi, because pi is a rational number. So 3 squared is 9. I leave pi in my answer, so my final area is 9 pi square centimeters. Remember, area is squared because it's not just one-dimensional. So it's number 1. Number 2, again, determine the area of a circle. So area of a circle means we're using pi r squared, again, leaving it in terms of pi. So for this one, they gave us this information, which from side to side through the center of a circle is known as the diameter. So if the diameter is 16 and I'm using area, which is pi r squared, it's obvious that I have d here and r here. So I have to turn my d or use my diameter and figure out, well, what's the radius? So you take half. half of your diameter is your radius. So your radius here is 8. So once we get our 8, we substitute it in. It says in terms of pi, so I'm just evaluating 8 squared, which is 64. So my final answer is 64 pi square centimeters. Okay, so two very similar questions. One gave the diameter, one gave the radius, both in terms of pi. And then finally, for this one, I think I was just showing you for number 2 here. If you wanted to round to the nearest decimal, like the nearest tenth, and it didn't say in terms of pi, you would just put everything right into your calculator and then round. Okay, so in terms of pi means you see pi in your answer. If it asked you to round to a decimal of any sort, you would just evaluate everything and then round. Number 3, moving on, it says if the circumference of a circle is 10 pi, so again, notice what I'm underlining or highlighting here. Circumference is 10 pi. We have to find the area in square inches. So what I always like to do with this is say, okay, so circumference has 2 formulas. Area only has 1 formula, right? So circumference is 2 pi r or pi d. Area is pi r squared. So since area only has pi r squared, I want to pick the circumference formula that's going to help me find the area. So I have to pick the circumference formula that's going to use the radius. So what I decided to do is take it a step further in case you want to use the diameter. I know that C equals pi d. So if C is 10 pi, I just substitute in and I say 10 pi equals pi d, divide by pi, and then the diameter is 10. If the diameter is 10, remember, I need the r for the radius. In the area formula, I take half of my diameter, and I find that my radius is 5. So I substitute in 5. I want it in square inches, so I put everything... in square inches. So I only put in 5 squared into the calculator. I leave the pi out because look over here. My answers all have pi along with the numerical number right there. So I'm only going to do 5 squared to get me 25 pi, and then it matches here. If it was a multiple choice, this would say in terms of pi. But because your answers are off to the side, it's assumed it's in terms of pi when you see the pi symbol there. All right. And then finally, number 4, it says a dog is tied with a rope to a stake in the ground. The length of the rope is 5 yards. So that's kind of important, right? The length of the rope is 5 yards. What's the area in square inches in which the dog can roam? So if you think about putting a stake in the ground and having a dog attached to the end and it going around the pole or around that stake, it's going to form a circle. So there's kind of what I have. Here's my stake in the ground. There's my dog. So from the stake to where the dog is, and if he's like pulling it really tight, that's actually going to be the rope or the radius of your circle. So your radius is 5 yards. Your area formula is pi r squared. So you take your 5, you substitute it right in. And then again, if I look at my choices, pi is in all my answers except these 2 down here. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to find it in terms of pi and then see if that's my answer. So when I do it in terms of pi, 5 squared is 25, leave pi, and choice 1 is 25 pi. Okay. And then the last 2 are 5 and 6. These 2 are going to be submitted through Google Forms, but just to kind of give you some hints, to kind of give you a little head start here. Number 1 says that the circumference of a circle measures 22 units. We have to find the area of the circle, express your answer in terms of pi. So remember, circumference equals 22 pi. The circumference formula is pi d. If you want area, that's area equals pi r squared. So think about how the diameter helps you find the area if you need pi r squared. Okay, so that should be number 5. And your answer is in terms of pi. So leave pi out of your calculator, but it has to be in your final answer. Okay, and then 6, we have a circular garden, has a diameter of 12 feet. So again, diameter 12 feet. How many bags of topsoil must Linda buy to cover the garden if 1 bag covers an area of 3 square feet? So you're trying to cover an area, right? So it's a circle, it's a circular garden. So you're using area equals pi r squared. The diameter is 12 though. So once you find the information from the diameter to substitute in, remember, One bag is 3 square feet. So however much area you have, figure out how many bags you need by dividing that area by 3. And remember, if it's a little bit more, it means you have to buy another bag. It's a real life application question, okay? So try that one too. So 5 and 6, you'll be submitting your answers through um, Google Forms. You're not being graded. We just want to see that you guys are checking things out and trying your hardest.